Hey everyone, welcome back to Elizabeth Squared. I'm Lizzie.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth. Today we're going to be talking about multiplication and division, but honestly, we're going to be really diving in deep to the mathematical teaching practices, or the MTPs as some call.
So instead of just focusing on like what to teach, we're focusing more on how we teach it, which is kind of
Yeah, I mean it is. I mean, because it determines basically whether students actually like understand like the content, or like in this case like multiplication or division, or they honestly just memorize it.
hmm And I feel
Yeah.
like multiplication is like one of those topics where it's really easy to jump straight to memorizing facts and you feel like you have to right away.
Exactly, and that's almost like the times tables or like the standard algorithm. Like I feel like that's very easy to just, you know. I didn't mean
Yeah,
what you
well,
said.
and I know like when I was in elementary school, like it was so pushed onto us, like you have to know your times
Oh yeah.
tables, and it was all over, it was on every single wall, the like square that
Little
had like the
paper
diagonal.
charts like
Yeah.
in front of you.
And
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
remember being so panicked because I didn't. Like, and I still don't know my times tables. So it's like,
Literally.
but now, like, as I'm older, obviously I know like you can still do everything without having it memorized. But I feel like as a
Yeah.
kid, like you feel like you have to, or you're not going to be able to follow anything. But the
Yeah.
MTPs, they kind of push us to slow down and like ask, like, oh, what does this actually mean? How does this actually work?
Exactly. Like I mean, you could understand like helping you understand multiplication as like equal groups, at least for the younger grades, and then more division of like as sharing or a sense of grouping in a different way than multiplication.
Exactly. And every teaching move that we make should support that understanding.
Yeah. So one of the biggest practices is the establishing clear. Let me whip out my book for a second. What was it? Establishing clear learning goals.
Like, and not just being like, oh, solve 4 times 23, but understanding what 4 times 23 represents.
Like actually represents it. And that's like a huge like shift, because now you're teaching more of what it means instead of just getting those answers. So instead of getting just, oh, 4 times 23 is whatever, you're actually understanding what that means, like what 4 times
Exactly.
23 means.
Exactly. And that connects right into like eliciting evidence and like the wait, let me start over. And that connects right into eliciting evidence of student thinking.
And I mean, that basically just means giving like students a chance to basically show what they know, honestly. I mean,
Exactly. And like some of the examples, so we were given these super fun books
I love
all
lovely
about
books.
the math like teaching practices. And
hmm
some of the examples is like drawing a model or using blocks or just like explaining your thinking out loud.
Yeah. And I mean, we use these books when what was it? We did, oh, leading an activity. Was it this one? No, it wasn't this book. But we still had to connect them. That was our other book. Just kidding. Totally
Yeah.
lied. But we still had to connect our,
No, we did.
uh,
Oh no, it was the other book, but
no, it was the
we
other
had to
math book.
connect then take it and connect it to like
Yeah.
what practices we use because that was a question our professor asked us after we led
After.
our
Yeah.
activities is what math teaching practices are activity connected to. So it kind of again, it
Yeah.
all connects together.
And everyone went silent, and that's why we're doing this podcast right now. Because, you know, it's kind of difficult to understand. But I
Yeah.
mean, even in the field, like students like could be given just like this blank like area, whether it's just a blank like a emptied off desk, a whiteboard, anything, and they
hmm
could be asked to model like a problem, and you learn, and they learn so much more from doing that versus just a teacher modeling it and then that's it. Like you just have to memorize by modeling by a teacher.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So another big one is using tasks that actually make students think.
Yeah. So it's not just like a worksheet of problems, but it's actually something that they have to like figure out on their own rather than a worksheet.
Exactly, like modeling for groups of 23 or breaking the numbers apart.
Or, I mean, even like those word problems where you're reading it and you have to decide, like, there's like certain words in there where you have to decide, okay, is it multiplication? Is it division? I mean, what is it?
Exactly. And that's where you can like see them actually building like the real understanding rather than
Hmm.
just what they're using because they memorized it, you know?
Yeah. And I mean, we also have so the other practice is the using or use and connect representations, which is
Mhm.
also very big for multiplication and division. Yeah.
And it uses arrays, area models, number lines, all of that.
Yeah. And I mean, I even feel like models especially help the students see what's happening, like being able to see it visually.
Yeah, exactly. Well, like breaking 23 into 20 and 3
Yeah.
and showing it visually.
And then, I mean, you can connect that back to the original equation. So you have like 40 times 20, and then 4 times 3, and then you add those together to get your sum, your total.
No, exactly. And that connection is what's building the conceptual understanding and what's getting them to really like look into the problem and figure it out on their own rather than just kind of flat out doing it, if that makes sense.
Exactly. And I mean, then it leads to building like fluency and just the conceptual understanding of everything. Like,
Exactly. And you're kind of like showing them like you don't need to rush. Like it's like you can take your time, you can do it and you can figure it out. It's not, like a
it, yeah, and it basically like pretty much lets the students understand first, and then when they do the procedure, it actually makes sense. Like when they do that, it actually makes sense to them.
another huge part of the MTPs is posing purposeful questions.
Exactly. I mean, instead of like just asking for the answers, you can ask things like, "Oh, why does that work?" or "Why does this strategy work?" And honestly, today when I was in pre-practicum, the teacher was like explaining a whole new like thing. But the students were able to use two different strategies. Well, they could use any strategy they want,
Mhm.
but a lot of kids did either drawing out the actual like addition problem, like with tens and ones, or they were able to break it up kind of just like what we talked about, how we would do like 20 and 4 or like 4 and
Yeah.
3. Like they were able to break that up. Um, so yeah, that's like another that I noticed that in my pre-prac site today. I mean, honestly, it sounds intimidating, but it can really just be so simple, and depending on how you understand that.
Yeah, and even just having students explain their thinking and respond to each other is showing
Hmm.
that.
Exactly. And I mean, the like peer-to-peer classmate like conversation, like the turn and talks or whatever, anything like that is where a lot of that learning actually happens.
Hmm. I feel like too, like the students are exactly, you're right. And the students are going to feel more comfortable talking to each other and listening to how they're
Definitely.
talking to each other and like interpreting it is going to
Yeah.
tell you so much more than just standing at the front and like asking them questions and, having them answer them. The hardest practices is definitely productive struggle, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, you're not wrong because it almost feels like we should be jumping in and like helping right away,
Hmm.
like immediately
Yeah,
for
because
those students.
you feel that watching them struggle, but giving
Well, yeah, I
students
mean,
like I don't want to be like, like, oh, I see that you're struggling. I'm going to choose not to help, but giving students that time to think is like super, super important.
exactly. And I mean, even if it's just waiting a few extra seconds, like, or even encouraging them to try like a different strategy can be very, very like important and very beneficial to them. I mean,
Yeah.
I see that all the time when I'm out in the field, like all the time. I literally watch the teacher sit there and she'll watch them do what they're doing, and then she'll step in when it comes to a certain point where you can tell
Hmm.
that person, like that student's very, like really struggling.
Yeah.
But I mean,
Yeah. And that's how they build problem solving skills and
oh yeah,
confidence all at the same
exactly.
time, is trying to figure
Exactly.
out on their own.
Yeah. What was that last one? What was the last one? No. Well, the other big one is using or use of evidence of student thinking.
So not just checking if like the answers are right, but looking at how the student got there.
Yeah, I mean, if the student's breaking apart like numbers, I mean, that just shows the understanding of place value,
And
like
if
just
they're,
right then and
yeah,
there.
yes. And like if they're struggling, like that tells you what needs to be retaught, you know? So like once you see their understanding and you see what
Hmm.
they're struggling with and what they're not, like you can tell what you might need to do better as a teacher, if that makes sense. Like you know what
Exactly.
you need to be kind of spending more time on.
Exactly. And then after that, honestly, just go back and adjust like your instruction based off that, like based on how that student's doing, how your class is doing, just
Mhm.
what like base it off of however you feel you need to do that and change it as needed.
Yeah. And when you look at all of these practices together, they really
Mhm.
change how we teach multiplication and division.
Yeah. I mean, it becomes less about like memorizing, kind of what I feel like I had to do when I was in like the younger grades, and
Hmm.
more about like understanding,
Yeah.
which I mean, I can see a difference between then, like when I was in school, elementary school, and now when I go into elementary schools, how different it's like become.
Yeah.
So it's more about that,
Yeah.
the
Well, students
understanding.
are now like really, like, I feel like teachers are really enforcing that students are using their models, really
Yeah.
talking through their thinking and making sure the students understanding what they're doing while they're doing it and making those connections.
Exactly. And I mean, honestly, all of this carries over into division. Like, I know we didn't really necessarily talk too much about that, but I mean, it carries on to division. And I mean, they're honestly so connected as is, like multiplication and division. So it just carries on. So, pretty much overall, the mathematical teaching practices are basically about making math make sense, pretty much, is how
Exactly.
you say that. Yeah.
Exactly. And you're almost having them focus more on not just getting the correct answer, like not
Hmm.
just doing it really quick and getting an answer, but understanding
Yeah.
why it works, why they're doing that, why they got this answer.
Exactly. And I feel like that's a very, very important when it comes to like multiplication and division. And I mean, it's important when it comes to
Mhm.
anything really, but with multiplication and division, like it's such a core like thing to have. So it's very important for students to be able to like, or teachers honestly, to be able to do how they do it, how these practices work.
Yeah, exactly. So that's all we have for our podcast today.
Yes, that's
Um,
it.
and I think this is our last one, so maybe
I
we'll
think
see you
so.
another semester.
Another semester.